Greetings, kindred spirits, and welcome to the grand finale of 2020. So we kickstart the month of December with a full moon lunar eclipse on the 30th of November. Then we have a new moon solar eclipse taking place on the 14th of December. And then the great conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn on the 21st of December, which is also the solstice. The winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere and the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. So the month of December is likely to be very intense and revealing on a global level. And on the day of the lunar eclipse, the sun will also have moved into the sign of Ophiuchus. So I'd like to wish all my Ophiucan brothers and sisters out there a very happy solar return. So the full moon will reach its peak in the sign of Taurus in the true lifetime sky on the 30th of November at 9:29 in the GMT time zone, at 4:29 in the EDT time zone, and at 20:29 in the AEDT time zone. The lunar eclipse will begin around 2 hours before the full moon reaches its peak, and our sun will be at 14 degrees in Taurus, and our sun will be at 0 degrees in Ophiuchus as the eclipse begins. The total duration of the lunar eclipse will last for 4 hours and 21 minutes and will begin at 7:32 in the GMT time zone. There is a map on the screen that shows the areas of the world where the eclipse will be seen, although we must take into consideration that eclipses do have a global effect. And even though the eclipse won't be seen in every country, it will create a domino effect from those places that are most shadowed on its path. And the shadow is an energy that Ophiuchus is very familiar with. So consciously, we are likely to feel a familiarity with this energy that will be emitted, especially since the South Node is in Ophiuchus too, and the North Node is in Taurus. Although they're not in a close enough proximity for the nodes to be in conjunction with our Sun and Moon at the time of the eclipse or the full moon. But the moon will pass over the moon's North Node the following day, the 1st of December. So midway through the eclipse, the full moon will reach its peak at 15 degrees in Taurus, and our sun will be at 1 degree in Ophiuchus. And the energy is likely to be deep and dark. And I feel globally it will be like going down into a rabbit hole where many will feel completely lost when it comes to making sense of anything. You know, this really is a time for contemplation and for us to listen to our inner voice. What is it trying to tell us? What is it we are missing or maybe avoiding? Because self-realization and self-truth will be important through this full moon lunar eclipse cycle, leading up to the new moon solar eclipse that will take place on the 14th of December in the sign of Ophiuchus. You know, I've said a few times that I have never seen the Ophiucan energy so strong throughout my 7 years of studying 13 Star Sign Astrology. You know, even though we've had a few outer planets transiting Ophiuchus over those particular years, you know, Ophiuchus is the doctor of the zodiac, also the alchemist, and also the mirror. So healing, conjuring up brews and alternative remedies are really Ophiuchus's forte. And discovering the gifts like the magic in nature, in the elements, etc. But the Ophiuchus energy itself is only willing to work with the organic elements, because anything artificial or superficial repels her. But I really do feel health will definitely be the theme throughout the rest of this year going into 2021. Health and self-reflection. In numerology, 2021 will be a 5 universal year, and the number 5 is all about change and sudden shifts both in consciousness and physically as well, in our physical material world. 5 is a very creative number and does require adaptability. And this particular lunar eclipse also requires adaptability. This eclipse, this lunar eclipse, is the kickstart to a mass awakening in much larger numbers than what we've seen so far already. It's an energy that will be prominent for at least the next 2 years. So we are being prepared for our true mission, not just as individuals, but as a collective globally. And if we can sit in this dark energy comfortably, then it shows we are really in that place of enlightenment, because this darkness sits right at the depths of our soul and right at the depth of the earth soul, especially with the lunar eclipse taking place in the sign of Taurus, which is a very earthbound sign. And Ophiuchus is it's a sign of ascension, really. And I said in my lunar eclipse podcast in June, when we had a lunar eclipse in Ophiuchus then, that it's all about us going into the self, deep, deep into the self. Whereas in the June lunar eclipse in Ophiuchus, we went into the self for self-reflection. But now, and when I refer to the rabbit hole, it's now we go down the umbilical cord into the sign of Aquarius, since the umbilical cord from Ophiuchus is attached to Aquarius. Aquarius, being the mother of Ophiuchus in mythology. So we are really going down to be reborn this particular time. So with the Taurus energy that our moon is confronting this lunar eclipse, it's more than likely about a fear of change that surfaces. Whether that be emotionally, mentally, or even physically. But in whatever way it plays out, it will be deep and sacrificial. This is the death process, a shedding and releasing of any stuck energy that may be holding us back from progression, especially if it involves any form of craft. So it's all about creativity. And in creativity, it's also about birthing. It's a very creative process. So there will be a great gift that comes out of this full moon lunar eclipse, although it may not reveal itself until the new moon solar eclipse on the 14th of December. And we have mentioned the Phoenix energy a lot over the last few years, especially since a lot of spiritual growth has taken place during that time. But this new moon solar eclipse coming up on the 14th of December will be the real thing, so to speak. Especially since it will be taking place in the sign of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. So when the South Node entered into Ophiuchus in September, I did say this was the crowning before the birth. And, there is a stage before birth where the baby kind of fears coming out into the world. It's that instant, that moment of like fear and the solar eclipse, I feel, will be the actual birth in itself. But this is also the phoenix energy, as I said, this lunar eclipse is about us going back to the ashes. Globally, it's like going down into the ashes before the phoenix rises. So the next 2 weeks is going to be, a little bit kind of debilitating. There may feel like there's no hope for some. I just feel there's going to be a lot that's going to happen. But, we have to see how that plays out. I mean, we do have another solar eclipse next December. Actually, the 4th of December, which is my birthday. Next year, 2021. So it does show that the change and growth that is going to be ongoing with spurts of mass awakening. So there's going to be a mass awakening this year, definitely. And I feel next year there's going to be more. So it's something that's going to occur over the next 2 to 4 years. But I feel the next 2 years will be the most intense. So the T-square that formed with the moon's nodes and Neptune at the last new moon has now formed into a grand cross, which would be taking us into 2021. Now, grand crosses do represent repetitive cycles and brings to light what cycles needs to be broken, especially if we are not aligned with our true identity or have taken on too much. Whatever the case, something needs to go. And although this will affect us all differently, it is a global energy. One, because the eclipse energy lasts for several months and is a global event. And secondly, because the moon's nodes are also involved, which represents the societies that we live in. Also our destiny. And I have been saying for over a year now that it is important that we empower ourselves and come into our own unique sovereignties, because there will be no room for codependency in any form when it comes to relationships, intimately or globally. A healthy mind, body and soul will be needed. Healers and spiritual teachers will also be needed more so than ever before, but with the realization that we can only help those who want to help themselves. And there are those that need to learn for themselves. I know I was one of those people, and I think most of us have been. We have to learn for ourselves, because that's what got me into researching and stuff like that. It's because I need to make up my own mind and follow my own path. And, that is an energy that's got to escalate and spread throughout this world. Because we have to be ready as well. We have to be ready to reach that point of ascension. Because before we ascend, we have to go into the soul, into the darkness, to ascend into the light. And, that process is not a very comfortable one. And for those of you that have been through that, you kind of know what it entails. So because our sun and moon will be involved in this grand cross as well at the full moon lunar eclipse, it does emphasize that these are the issues that will arise. Taurus needs his comforts in life. He likes routine and tends to stick with the familiar. He is traditional and will fight to keep things the same, especially when it comes to the material comforts of life. He can often become overindulgent and lazy when he's not in his happy place. And globally, this is all about the economy and public relations. And on a personal level, it's about finances and intimate relationships, because Taurus is ruled by Venus. And those are the areas that Venus rules. We will also have a T-square this full moon, with Venus in opposition to the Black Moon Lilith and Uranus, and all three will be in square to Jupiter, which is again another grand aspect that is very relevant and significant to this lunar eclipse energy. It does suggest a lot of nervous energy will be present. There could be a sudden change economically, or at least a brewing of it. Maybe for the moment it will play out on a smaller scale, affecting smaller organisations or companies. And I guess that is already a known or inevitable factor at this time. But the brunt of it hasn't fully been realised or felt yet, or revealed. This T-square definitely shows an upheaval of being off guard or off balance. There is also a suggestion of oppression and extreme lack of movement or freedom. And I guess this is where the restlessness of the world's events starts to escalate, as feelings of frustration and resentment could become overwhelming. The Black Moon Lilith is the shadow walker and is very connected to the Ophiuchus energy. And her current transit of Aries conjunct Uranus definitely signifies disruption. And it's a very shadowy energy as well. But it's also an energy heavily connected to the Kundalini ascension process. And like I said, this is us going down the umbilical cord through the Ophiuchus energy to the Aquarian energy, and Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So this is also an aspect that affects intimate and business relationships, where it could get too competitive or rebellious. We must free ourselves of toxicity in all respects, emotionally for sure, as well as physically and mentally. But like I said, the gift of the release will direct us towards constructive change and support. Like I said, this is not a time to be a martyr. It is a time to get into our self-power, so that we can lead by example with compassion and strength. Through this lunar eclipse cycle, we may see people act out of character, or we may see the world events escalate. And, we're seeing a lot going on, both politically and socially. And I really do feel like this energy is gonna cause a lot of the world events to escalate. So December will be a very telling month. And we do all need to be in our self-power. And, we can do that through sound vibration, singing, creating music, just basically crafting. We all need to get into our creative energy and get comfortable in our own skin, get comfortable in our own soul. And I will actually put a link in the description box to the video, the live I did with Rebekah, because we actually covered quite a bit in that energetically with what's going on. So for the moment, kindred, stay in peace. And as always, much love.